Hi, and welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast. Today, we're going to be talking to Robert Armbrister. Bob, he goes by. Now, Bob and I are going to be talking about how to go from paper, tracking things on paper and hoping that you get things right, hoping you track things properly in your business, to move to technology and knowing that you've got things right, knowing you've got the confidence to build a business with all the information you need as an owner to keep this thing running smoothly. Let's see what Bob has to say. Talk to you on the other side of the episode. Bob, how are you?
Hey, Dom. Good. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually excited to have you here because I think you bring a level of clarity to the confusion of the everyday of a business owner.
We try to, yeah, definitely try to break it down to simple stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Or I just put a huge challenge in front of you. We'll see how we do in the episode.
Right. Yeah, it's harder to make things simple, right?
Yeah. Well, just so everybody knows, today you and I are going to be talking about how to move from paper and hoping to tech and knowing. So that's where we're going. Who knows where we're going to go in this episode? But let me start with this. Bob Armbrister, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these forward-facing contractors all around the world?
Yeah, great question. So just to fast forward it, right? Software guy, always found ways to use software to solve business problems, and had the pleasure 5 or 6 years ago to build a mobile app for a construction firm. And when I rolled it out, I realized how small and tiny my hands are compared to a construction worker's hands that actually.
Oh, you've been using the app,
right? That made me realize the gap in technology and how difficult it is to implement in construction. From there on out, our software firm that I get to run has helped hundreds of construction firms implement technology by utilizing that one value of empathy, right? Understanding the end user and not the person building it. And that's helped us become one of the leading custom software firms for construction. And it's that right there. So took a long life story, break it down to why am I talking about construction.
It actually sounds like there's a couple of good stories in there, because I've also shaken the hands of guys whose hand is like a bagel with a bunch of breakfast sausages sticking out of it.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
Yep. Yeah.
His wedding ring took an entire ingot of gold. So big.
Right. Yeah. And you get these computer hands and they're tiny, but yeah, so it's funny.
Hey, just to launch us into this, because I want to talk to you about how, every business owner is dealing with different issues at different times and in their own way, because really there's a lot of uniqueness. But I think stories help a lot too. Take us back to a story, maybe even that first app. What problem were you trying to solve for that company? The guy with big thumbs, big hands. And what did you guys create?
Yeah, I mean, in those first cases, it was really time entry, right? Which seems like, you hear about all these stories and all these trends in construction around digital transformation and drones and robots and all these great things. But at the end of the day, what we've seen is a lot of, mid-market firms are still struggling with the simple facts of getting time and materials and getting that data back to the main office. And, so, as simple as it sounds, I mean, that's where a lot of clients, they know the right way to do things, right? They've streamlined their physical process as best to their ability. I mean, you should see the forms and the different thing. I mean, it's great, right?
Yeah.
It's taking it to that next level. And that's where, we've really started with most clients, is just that first step of how do we save time and how do we make people's lives in the field easier.
How much, I'm part of these conversations too, so I'm going to ask you, we haven't talked about this before, but how much of this, when you're sitting across from a business owner, runs a construction company, how much of it is a people problem? They're like, Bob, you don't understand. My guys aren't going to do that. Or my guys they make it hard. How much of the whole conversation starts with that bottleneck?
I mean, it's 80% people, 20%, technology. The technology is the easy part, right? Like it's really about how, and what we found in construction, it's really understanding the stakeholder the stakeholder needs, because too often in construction, you have one or two groups that may be driving some innovation or some change. And in construction, I mean, as that you can't just rely on one department or one group, that so many different people and different teams touch a project or are part of that success. And so, what we found is 80% of it is is the people side, the process side, change management, and then the technology, is we don't even talk about technology solutions at first, because a lot of times, oh, definitely. No, we're not coming there telling somebody you need to use a tool. How could we do that? We need to understand what you're trying to do. And that's really, where, the owners of construction firms know where they're trying to go, and technology is just a tool.
Yeah. Like, these conversations you're having, you mentioned a word that people might not be familiar with: stakeholder. So $3 word, right? Can we go back for a second and talk about my company? Let's say I run I'm going to talk about a company that's got let's say I do renovations, right? So I've got guys that do demo. I've got purchasing department, all that in the office, designers and engineer. But then I've got guys who do demo, the guy that comes in and builds the walls, got the drywallers, they might be subs, that kind of just kitchen bath reno. Who are the stakeholders in that company?
Yeah, great. Thank you maybe I get too technical, right?
I do too, though, right? Because I've heard these words, but for a lot of people, this is new territory. So I want to keep it to where we all just set that level. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's great. So stakeholders in that kind of scenario, right? You have, your director or the business development side, right? Whoever, what are the promises that were made from a sales side, right? Then you have the person responsible for the execution. That's a stakeholder, right? Then you have the team members that are actually executing the work, right?
Swinging the hammer.
Right? Those people in the field doing the work. And then you have the different depending on the size, you might have a procurement person, someone worrying about supplies, materials that need to be purchased on that project. You might have a technology stake. Maybe IT needs to be involved, and what is the technology that's needed. And then at the end of the day, it's the safety is going to be a stakeholder. And then after that job, accounting, right? Accounting has to eventually process everything and send out. So
capture change orders.
Right? I mean, what seems like a simple, hey, this is a 1 month project or 2 month project. Now you're talking about 10 or 12 different groups of people have a stake in it. And a lot of times what we've seen is if you just focus on one group, maybe make it great for the field. Field loves it.
Yeah.
All I got to do is fill this thing out. And then all of a sudden accounting, you need 5 accounting people just to process all the stuff, right? Or the other way around, right? You make it too burdensome for the field to, make it easy on accounting or safety. And so what we've seen is construction, if you don't involve everybody as much as a lot of times you don't want to, right? You don't want to, right? Because you're thinking, oh, last time I did this, I got
last time we asked. Yeah.
And they, drug everything down, slowed it all down. So we found that getting all of that figured out is the key. But those are the stakeholders that I'm mentioning.
So before a business owner even thinks about adding technology to their business, what stage should they be at? What frustrations should you be feeling in your business before you start to think maybe we need a custom solution?
Yeah, what we like to see, and the model that I'll walk owners through is not making any technology decisions without understanding the why and where you're going for the next 5 years. Too often,
a 5-year plan.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Technology is an investment, right? I mean, if you get it wrong, you've set yourself back, and everyone's gotten it wrong. So everyone's felt that pain.
I'm putting my hand up here because I've gotten it wrong twice in one company, and pain both times.
Pain, right? And it makes you reluctant to do it again. And all that does is going to keep you further and further back from the industry. So, we really want to see, and we have a procedure that we help clients walk through to define that. Where are you going, right? Are you going to double in size? Or are you going to stay the same? That right there would change any technology decision potentially that you make. So without having that context, where you're going, why are you going there, and what are your competitive advantages going to be now and in the future? Those are really the other two things. Why do clients choose you now? Because you want to make sure your technology decisions enable that to continue to happen.
Of course,
you'd be surprised how often that can go wrong.
Like forgetting about the customer, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, so if people buy from you because of a relationship, and then maybe you implement technology that pushes your client further away,
or that could a way to right, because there's a lot of people here. Let's go back to the renovator example. You need to have plans or images, maybe some renderings that the client looks at and approves. So they have to be able to interact with this as well. It's not just an us thing, is what you're saying.
Yes. So, hey, my clients, they choose us because we're the low cost provider. Great. Well, let's make sure that any technology implement enables you to continue to drive costs lower and not increase, right? I know it sounds kind of simple. And then that's kind of the day one, make sure technology enables you to continue to win the work the way you're winning it now. And then having that 5-year plan is where we ask clients, well, what is your vision? Where are you trying to get to where your future competitive advantage is? They could say, hey, we're driving because we're going to grow twice as much and we want to do this, or we're going to continue to go down this avenue. All of that helps make longer term decisions around the technology use. So we try to make sure that clients are making decisions with that context in mind, because otherwise it's really short-sighted and they could be making big decisions around technology that might not support the vision of the owner or the leadership team. So
yeah, it's interesting the perspective that you're encouraging us to bring, because we talked about stakeholders. Thanks for defining that. That's an important part, right? Who needs a seat at the table, even though you might be the one driving it, or you as the owner might be the one wanting it. Suddenly have to get input from everybody else. And then talking a little bit about remembering the customer. I'm going to ask a question that I painfully know the answer to. How's that? How's that for a setup?
Great. Yeah, let's hear it.
What happens if you implement a software and don't get buy-in from everybody else in the company? Like everybody else isn't on board with the software that the owner. For those of you who are not watching the video on YouTube right now,
you're pointing at yourself, right?
I've learned from lots of bruising and burning my hands on the stove. What happens, Bob, if I don't go and talk to all the people who will eventually be using the software? Can you tell me what happened to me?
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm sure everyone's already probably experienced this, but yeah, I mean, you have, obviously you have a wasted investment. Most importantly, you've just spent culture capital, as I would say, right? So
it's a good way to say it. Yeah.
You've just, withdrawn from the culture bank of your organization, because there's going to be people that maybe they're not saying it, but they're just behind the scenes rolling their eyes like, here we go, Dom just bought this tool and didn't talk to us, and now he expects us to use it. And you're not going to get that.
All the pain just came flooding back, Bob.
Right.
That's exactly what I heard. Right.
Yeah.
But you didn't ask us, even though I knew they wanted it. We didn't have a formal place for them to talk about it. They wanted to talk about it. I wanted to get it done.
Right.
And I didn't let them have a steam valve, like just a let off valve to say, this is what we need. Right. This is what we need. This is what we need. Instead, I thought I heard what they needed and I brought it to them, and they were like, that's not really what we wanted.
Right.
Can't win.
Well, that's what the importance of that roadmap of seeing further down the road. You don't have to make decisions that makes everybody happy, right? But if you at least get everyone's input around the stakeholders and their needs, and you show them the future plan. Hey, here's where we're going as an organization. Hey, accounting, I hear you. You want these changes, but look, we have to do these things first. You're going to be next. Them just being able to voice that, and you put the projects in the right order, that's going to set you on a road to success.
So glad you said that. One of the problems of being a business owner is it is not a popularity contest. I'm running a company here. Right. But people get offended. And then let's overlay this, Bob, and I'm sure you've seen it. Family business, not just business, but family business, right? It's a delicate dance. When you've got family members around the table and everybody has their opinions, from their own perspective of what needs to change. And they're like, well, this is the first priority. This is the first priority. I have found the hard or the delicate part of a leader is reminding everybody, those, you're right, these are all priorities. And we're going to put all the priorities on a list. And one priority is going to end up being first, and another priority is going to end up being second. And just so everybody knows, at the beginning of this exercise, somebody's priority is going to be last on the list, but it doesn't mean it's the last priority. It's just
Right.
we need to do 10 other things before we get to number 11.
Man, it sounds like you've had this conversation before.
Never. Again, multiple bruises, lacerations, and lots of burning my hand on the stove.
Right. No, I mean, you definitely nailed it. And especially in technology, it's, if you try to tackle all of them at the same time, one, it's not going to work. But the odds are, after you get through 1 and 2, 3 and 4 have probably changed.
That's
so
a good
you should
point.
start the exercise over again after each of them, because of how quickly things change. I mean, we had that with a client. I'm actually writing a blog post right now on it. Is we had stakeholders' needs change. So the accounting team came in at the beginning of the project. We got their needs. 6 months later, we go to launch, and we're like super jacked. This is going to be great. It's going to change everyone's lives, and this company is going to be awesome. Accounting looks at it and goes, "It's not going to work." We're all like, "What you said?" And they're like, "Well, it changed. They're a system that they were connected with, and one of their big vendors had changed, and our team hadn't gone back and confirmed because they were busy building, right?" So I'm writing a post about it now because I want to make sure that, wow, look how fast it can change, right? So we're laughing about it now, but
painful at the time. It's an awkward meeting.
It just shows like you can't tackle more than one thing at a time, get everybody around it, and then reassess, because so much changes so quickly now.
You have a great story there. And so without giving away any confidences, because we're not here to talk about other people's companies without their permission, but can you tell us about that company, what kind of construction trade they're in, and what was their, I'm trying to use fancy words, what was their use case? Like, what were they trying to solve? Can you give us that story?
Yeah, use case is many, I mean, this is like a typical use case, but in this case, they were doing high volume of POs. So their client wanted, they had a big MSA, but many small POs for many projects, right?
Sorry, we got lots of keywords in here. So what was the industry they were in? Was it construction or contracting?
Yeah, I'm not going to say it. So yeah, I don't want to.
I know you don't want to give away the confidence,
but yeah, a very large Fortune 50 company that this firm is doing work for, and that company had a lot of requirements around governance, and we want every single project outlined. So you got to track everything to the nth degree to get it, their purchasing procurement system. So you've got a firm that has to now adapt what they're currently doing on all their other projects to
what their client wants.
Right. And so it's what most construction technology projects that we help with is a lot of times it's manual labor that we're trying to streamline, right? Not necessarily, we're not trying to remove bodies from a department, but we're growing so fast, we have to find a better way to process X or Y. And in this case, it's how do we process invoicing and get the right sign off and then send it. And really, just an Excel, just imagine hundreds and hundreds.
Contract management. This is a contract management game, right? Like, because we've got contracts, we have to meet certain rules.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So that's the use case. And we have a lot of clients like that, right? You've got, hey, our customer over here wants it done one way. This customer wants it done another way. Hey, they do work with us because, we're so flexible. And that's one of those examples of they have to maintain their flexibility as a construction firm because that's why their clients are choosing them. So they have to find technology that's flexible, right, to support it. And that's usually a case where we come in. So that's the use case, right? It's typically, these firms are all growing. They're leveraging existing systems, in some cases, manual systems. And, they don't need a nuclear submarine of a technology platform. They just need something that works, that calls things what they call them. And that was the use case is, hey, how do we take something that takes accounting 2 weeks a month to do? And how do we get it down to 2 or 3 hours?
Right. So when you're talking about taking out labor, you're really talking about the labor of tracking things, not the labor of swinging the hammer or turning the wrenches or installing things. You mean tracking how we do the business we do.
Right. Yep. How do we keep, a lot of what we're seeing in construction, right? You have some economic headwinds, but you have big backlogs. So construction firms don't want to add a bunch of overhead right now. They want to find ways to do things more efficiently. And that's where we come in and help them. And every situation's different. We like to show clients what other firms have done to tackle similar challenges because every single firm is different. And that's what's so much fun about it.
Yeah. Have you got a great story or a win? And talk about whatever industry it is. It could be excavation, it could be building, it could be plumbing, HVAC. But if you got a win that you can share so people get a sense of how this would work in the field.
Yeah, great. One of my favorites, what we're seeing a lot of companies do with getting field data collection, okay, also known as time and material tracking. We've seen a lot of firms focusing more where they used to be a month and a half behind. So, hey, it's the middle of July. We're looking at how June went. That was kind of the typical, hey, how did last month go? How are the projects going? What we've seen now with some of our firms that I don't want to call them advanced because if anyone looked at them, they'd look like every other, great privately held construction firm. They've now leveraged, since they're getting data daily from the field, right? Time, material, they're now using that data daily. So they know how their business is doing on a daily and weekly basis.
I can see the impact of that. With these cost increases that we had on raw materials like copper prices or plywood, it just something like a 2x4 went from $2, still not reasonable, to $6 to $10 over a month and a half. This was a little while ago. So if you're a month and a half behind finding that out, you're bidding new jobs 6 months out. You've got a 9-month rotation before you're catching up on price increases.
Right.
Yikes.
And this is not artificial intelligence. This isn't machine learning, right? This is literally the behavior of how do I get 100 people or how do I get 40 people to enter everything daily?
Yeah.
That is not a technical challenge. That's a behavior challenge. Can be done. Then you just look at the data. So it's not like we need to run all these crazy things or invest all this, money and stuff that may or may not work. It's literally, let's track project financials on a daily, weekly basis. Let's make decisions on that data. Those are some of the biggest wins because we see firms that are doing that becoming more competitive on the bidding because they really understand their business more than their competitors. So when they're bidding on projects,
they're bidding accurately. Yeah. They know when to walk away and they know when to push hard.
Right. And that's where you see something as simple as time entry or scheduling or some of these approaches actually helping the business win more work, which I think is probably the most exciting pieces.
Okay. You and I are having a beer right now. We're sitting across, it's wing night at the local place. And you're telling me about these great wins and cool stories from the field. And I'm a contractor. And here's the answer coming back. I'm channeling the spirit that's being fed to me from all the contractors listening to the podcast. Yes. They're saying this, but Dom but Bob, my guys aren't going to go for it. My guys won't enter data daily. Are you kidding me? So we're just having beer and wings. Give me a couple of tips. What would I do? Or how would you answer me if I said, but Bob, my guys aren't going to enter data daily?
Yep. So the key to getting that stuff adopted is to make sure it makes their lives easier. So you have to have a conversation with those guys, or the team in the field. Why wouldn't you want to enter this daily? Or what's the problem now, right? What are your biggest struggles? Sometimes we'll do some exercises with the field team because you have to talk to them. You can do
guys, as in this case, you guys, but whoever you're using to build this custom software has to talk to people using it.
Yeah, even the leaders, like you just said, if you're having a beer, hey, how often has that person been on the field and seen what's going on? That's critical. But yeah, we have a firm like that one that went from a monthly reporting to a daily. They have a guardrail for all their technology implementations that says we will not do anything that doesn't impact the field, that doesn't make the life of the field employee better.
Nice.
So in most cases, yeah, if you just ask them, will you enter time? Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be a waste of time. Well, why? And then you ask them, well, because last time you guys had me enter stuff, right? You'll dig up all of this. Hey, last time they've probably been through so many bad experiences. If you gave them a tool that actually saved them time, gave them the information they needed, made their life easier, they're going to use it. But it starts with that feedback and getting down to their needs. And that's just an empathetic conversation around how does your day look? How do you get this information? And starting it like that.
I don't want to throw a wrench in here, but here's one of the questions that I know. I've actually heard this in conversations in the past. Dom, I got to take off my gloves to enter on the phone. And it's not, they don't just say the phone, they give it another noun. That
right.
The first word's not flip. Well, let's just say I don't enter this on my flip phone. It's not flip either. I got to take off my gloves, man. It's a hassle. It takes me more time to do this than to give you the data, to give you the info. How do we, can technology get around that simple physical thing? Like these guys are wearing welding gloves or they're wearing nitrile gloves. You know what I mean? They're working with their hands, and now we want them to do something delicate with their iPhone or their whatever.
Yeah, and that's really where you bring in what we call user experience professionals. So we have a team of user experience team members that actually craft that. Because you're right, if you build something that the experience is awful, how often do you bring that app back up on your phone, right? And we have a lot of manufacturing clients, the same thing, that they have technology within their facilities that they need to get individuals to engage with. But if they create an app with really small buttons for people with really big fingers, it's going to have a poor experience. So I think going back to that, like, okay, well, when are their gloves off, and when do they need to enter this information? Having that into the consideration on how you want people to interface with technology, it's way different than, an executive getting sold at a conference this new shiny tool and then bringing it back to the company and saying we need to use it, versus let's walk through every single person, how they would engage with this. Is it going to make their life harder or easier? And making those types of non-technical requirements for technology, I think, is how you get stuff adopted.
Yeah, that's a really good, it's a good perspective you bring, because if I don't like using an app, it's the same if I have games on my phone. If there's a game that's a hassle to play, like a word game, if it's not easy to play, I'm not going to play it anymore. Not that I have a ton of games on my phone, but I'm trying to use an example of, if it's you touch one button and you get all these options, that's a lot easier than trying to scroll through little drop-down menus. And now I got to take off my safety glasses, put on my regular glasses. It needs to be big, especially for older guys like me.
Oh yeah, it's simple stuff, right? Like we see it with field technology. If someone has to fill out some data on a phone or on a tablet, and we know that person is only assigned to these 5 jobs, why make them scroll through a list of 200 jobs? It's just something as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
That can make someone's life easier and reduce, misinformation to get in there.
So this is a question we haven't prepped on, Bob, but I'm sure you've heard it before. A lot of guys will say, but I'll just buy something off the shelf. I'll use X company or Y company or Z company. I'm not going to mention their names here, but we all know that there's different specialized apps for this type of application. Why, and I think I understand where you're going to go with this, but why shouldn't I just get an off the shelf one that 1,000 people are already using, so we know 1,000 other companies are happy with?
Yeah. So Dom, our first question when someone in construction comes to us, we ask them, how many times have you tried to adopt a tool for this purpose and have failed? They can't be shopping around saying, well, I think I want a new time entry tool and we haven't tried anything and we want you to build us one. We'll say, no way, we're not going to do
Oh,
We want the firms that come to us say, okay, we tried to use X for time entry and it didn't work because of this. Then we went to this company and we tried it here and it didn't work because our business is unique to the point where we've already tried a few options.
So
That's
you
where we
want people
know.
who are battered and bruised. You want people who come to you going,
We
look,
want-
man, we can, sorry, but that's the reality. Like we're trying to figure this out. I've tried multiple ways to figure it out, but off the shelf, not cutting it. Is that what you're saying?
Right. You should always try to use and it's kind of funny because in our sales process, we start by trying to talk people out of custom, because if you can find
Sorry, I was drinking my coffee when you said that. That's the opposite.
well, it's going to be lower if you have an operation that can utilize something off the shelf to solve in line with your 5-year vision and line up with your competitive advantage now and in the future. Absolutely do it. It's going to be probably less costly, probably, sometimes not. If you get to the point where it's, hey, I have 2 divisions and I want to share resources and I can't find teams that or software that'll do that, or hey, I want my customer to interact because they choose us because of our customer experience and this none of the tools give them the data. It's those cases where clients are a good fit for custom when they have clearly identified the need, and most of the time we're interfacing with off-the-shelf tools that clients use, right? Hey, I've got.
Oh, you are. You're interfacing with existing off the shelf. So it's not.
Yeah.
Like they're already using, just pick an accounting system, QuickBooks or Sage or something. They're already using that and you're.
Right. Hey, I've got computer ease and I want something in the field that I can't find anything else to connect to, or, hey, I need help interfacing these 3 systems with Procore, but I still need my team too. You just fill in the blanks. But yeah, we're typically the last resort. And that's, we're good with that. There's so many great things. I mean, in construction technology right now, there's so much great software coming out, and a lot of innovation. But we're definitely, when a firm is unique enough, because that's the other downside of a lot of new software in construction is being built by people that think construction is just like any other industry that might be everyone runs the same way. What we know in construction is that is not the case. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times some of the newer software might not be as flexible because the people building it don't know construction as well as some of us that have done it for so many years. You can have 2 firms, same industry, same market, run things completely different when it comes to systems.
It's interesting that you say that because I get to peek into all these different companies. And earlier you were talking about, a company that's going through a lot of changes. Now they're running better. What I found is that companies that run really, really well are very boring to look at from the outside. Like there's just no drama. Things run. It's kind of boring. If you look at a high drama company where people are always running around with their hair on fire, that's a company that's probably having trouble making money. The owner's stressed to the max. The systems aren't working. But when you find a company that is working, it's pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Things just happen. It's predictable. It's kind of boring, but making money is boring. It's when you're not making money that people get frantic.
And the culture is better. You have less turnover. That's one thing we've seen too is firms that are slowly improving the systems and supporting people and listening to their teams are having less turnover, higher retention. They're attracting new talent because maybe they are a little boring when it comes to looking in from
boring's the right word, but it's the wrong use of the word boring, if that makes sense. Right. It's just there's no drama in the company. Everything's predictable. Once this happens. We always do this. If there's an exception, we know what to do next. But things just flow, and that's you can really build a business there that lets the owner step back a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing that occurred to me here while we're talking about this is as time marches on, technology is only getting stronger. And so if you're dealing with, it doesn't matter whether you're in the residential, commercial, or civil institutional market, those companies that are pushing work to us, or the homeowners who are now what we call hipsters or something like that, they're going to have demands for a company that's tech. You just can't give a hipster couple a piece of graph paper and say, this is how your new patio is going to look. They'll be like, oh, okay, sure. and then somebody else comes by with a 3D rendering and a shared drive to show them the images and walk them through different finishes, they're just going to choose that contractor. That's just what they're going to do because they're more comfortable with what they see somebody lining up to the way they see the world.
Yeah, that's a great insight because we do see a lot of times firms coming to us because their supply chain, ahead of them is requiring them to provide certain amount of data or validation or compliance information that they're not prepared to. So that is a driver. And yeah, you don't want to be always being pulled through the technology innovation channel because of one of your customers. It means you're a little behind.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's depending on who you're selling to and why customers choose you. That's why we kind of go back to that 5-year plan. Where are you trying to go and why do your current clients choose you? Reminding yourself of those things when you're making technology decisions, I think is something that any owner, regardless of tech savviness, can be a CIO, make that kind of decision with just those few things. Yeah. Not even worrying about the nuts and bolts of the technology, but
you mentioned a 5-year plan a couple of times, Bob. It's something near and dear to my heart. But don't worry about anything that I might think. What do you see people using for 5-year plans? How do you build one? Where do you go to get one?
Yeah, so we're big into EOS and scaling up. I actually pulled this book out the other day.
Oh,
yeah. So those are
which one do you like better? Do you like the Verne Harnish Rockefeller system or the traction one, EOS?
So I like Verne Harnish. I think early on in my business, the EOS system was great. I think once you get to a certain size, you need to read Scaling Up by Verne Harnish for sure. And so, yeah, I mean, there's some mechanisms like that I think just make sense. And if you're using those types of 5-year plans, I mean, it starts with, you get the big, hairy, audacious goal. That's more like 10 years. But getting that 5-year plan and then breaking it down into years and quarters, that's
you're
more
singing to my heart right now, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, that's more like business planning, right? But from a technology side, how do you leverage technology to get there? So whether or not you've got a huge 5-year plan or not, versus just hey, are you going to grow or are you going to stay the same size? I mean, there's some things like that to help in those technology decisions. So it's not like, if you're an owner listening or running, don't feel like you have to have this projection to the nth degree from your business to make a good technology decision, but just knowing, where you're trying to go and why can really impact the decisions you're making. You probably do it for everything else in your business. Just need to do it for technology as well.
Let's do a shameless plug for somebody else's books right now. So I'm going to tell you who we're talking to. And I think this is who we're talking to right now. Right now, there is the son or daughter of an existing owner. So they're in the family business and they're waiting for they're moving into that leadership role where eventually they're going to take over the business. They've got some exciting changes they want to make, but the way this company is running now under its current head is running the way it runs. So they want to make some changes. So if you're in that situation, there's 2 books that Bob and I just talked about. The books are, you just held up Scaling Up by Verne Harnish. Verne's actually a friend of mine. He's a great guy. So that's called Scaling Up. His previous book is called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. You can buy either of those 2 books, but I'd suggest you get Scaling Up. You're looking on your shelf.
I'm looking to see if I have the other one.
You probably have it. Yeah.
I did.
Mine is so beat up, it looks like an old recipe book. And that's Traction by Gino Wickman. So this is the second book, Traction. He's holding it up there. Traction by Gino Wickman. And that is the EOS system. That stands for Entrepreneur Operating System. Get that book or get the other one. And that's how you can build your 5-year plan. It's obviously something that I do all day with our clients too, but just read the book, start there, because it'll show you the thought process for building that plan on paper. No offense, Bob, before you decide on custom software, before you decide on a new market, before you decide on changing anybody on your team, you have to have a plan, right? Shameless
Yep.
plug for some other people. How's that?
Yeah, I know. We need to throw like an Amazon link in there, Don.
I should. Yeah. I don't do that. I should. My business coach would tell me to do that, but I
Right.
don't do
Sure.
that. Yeah. Hey, Bob, thank you. This has been great. And I'm sure you've also raised some other questions for people. So if people want to find you in this big wide world, where the heck is Kalamazoo, Michigan, and how do we find you there?
Yeah, so Kalamazoo, that's our headquarters. We also have teams in Texas and a few other spots, but yeah, you can check us out at sparkbusinessworks.com. And you can find, we've got a ton of resources for construction. All sorts of tools and blog posts, you name it, it's on there for free. Just check it out at sparkbusinessworks.com.
Excellent. Now you got to tell me, you may not know the answer, but how did Kalamazoo get its name? Because it is one of the best named cities ever.
Yeah, I think it's from some of the Native Americans, some of the tribes that were in this area. So
Okay.
I believe that's the case, and it's pretty cool. We have some big companies have come from here, Stryker and Pfizer and others, which is pretty
no
cool.
way. I didn't know Pfizer came from there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Pfizer headquarters. Actually, the largest. I think it's the largest pharmaceutical plant in North America, right there in Portage, Michigan, which is adjacent to Kalamazoo. So yeah, a lot of Stryker, Pfizer. We also have 3 colleges, so it's cool college town. Pretty neat. And
that's good for a software company, I would say.
Yeah. And Grand Rapids is just north of us. Real great tech scene in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's the second largest city in Michigan and growing as well. So good Midwestern construction, firms in this area, all up in the Midwest that we help, and it's pretty great. So
that's great. Well, I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Really, I can tell from your conversation you're very you're very comfortable with how technology interacts with construction, and you're right. You just can't just get somebody local who's I could build you software, I could build you an app. This is a little more intricate than that because your whole business rests on making that right decision.
Yeah, the firms that are choosing custom, there's reasons when to do it. It's a journey. It is going to be one of their differentiators, and it's impactful to the business. It's more than just solving one problem. It's a journey on, we're going to solve one problem and then the next problem, and they've got it kind of mapped out to where, it's going to be a differentiator for their organization. And typically it takes those systems that you've built as an entrepreneur or an owner and systematizes them, because what these books are doing is taking your secret sauce as an organization and putting a framework around it to manage it. Software should be right next to you doing the exact same thing. And it's fun. We love it. So
yeah, you just said something actually important, and I want to translate it into what I hear from our listeners, our audience. So what Bob just said is it takes your secret sauce and transforms it into a plan. When anybody listening says, I just want to get everything out of my head and onto paper, if you've ever had that frustration or said something like that, that's what Bob is talking about in those 2 books, which obviously you and I are very familiar with. It's amazing. I've actually built 2 of my other companies, which I've sold both of them using both of those 2 strategic planning systems. You're just not going to find a bigger fan of strategic planning than me. You're just not going to, because I've lived through the changes and I've lived through using those systems to do it. And you can't do it without it, or I haven't figured out how.
Oh yeah. Yep. You will. Yep. Can't scale without it.
Yeah. Bob, thanks so much for being on the show. We might have to have you back again in the future.
Yeah. I think we're going to do one on strategic planning, or the 5-year.
We should do
plans.
You know what? I did one before. It was a head-to-head. It was called a head-to-head battle, and I did it with a guy, Mike, who I know, and where we both took a position. Like he supported one and I supported the other, and we went at it. Fun. He's a great guy. He's actually a business broker that I know really well. But maybe we need to redo that or something else like that. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Bob.
Tom. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day. Well. Thanks, Bob, for joining us here to talk about technology and how to put it in place. Look, the reality is sometimes our guys in the field aren't interested or excited in tracking their hours, tracking materials, tracking change orders, because it's just a hassle to them. And that example about guys taking off their gloves, for me, that's a real example and something we have to get through when I'm talking to business owners in our coaching meetings about the reality of gathering good data. Listen, I'm not a data guy. I'm not a numbers guy, but I understand now the value of having good numbers. I understand the quiet confidence that comes from looking at your dashboard, something that Bob would help you build or I help you build. Like, I understand the value of having that. So I can just look at my company on paper and not have to dig in a million places to find a million tiny little bits of information. When the phone's ringing, people are standing at the door, there's a vendor dropping off some stuff, and I got to go to a customer site. I just want to have one simple place to look at everything. How nice would life be then? Listen, folks, thanks, Bob, for joining in. I hope you enjoyed Profit Tool Belt podcast. If you do, leave a comment, like, subscribe, all of those things. And also, we're going to be changing something in the future. Let me tell you about it in a second. First of all, the next piece of the episode is called Story Time with Dom. It's where I share real stories with real people and real situations. But we're going to be changing Story Time with Dom in the medium to long-term future. And the way we're going to change it is I'm going to be asking you to give me your questions and I'll answer them live here on the podcast. If you want to have me answer one of your questions, it's really easy. You're going to go to speakpipe.com / ask Dom. And then just leave your voicemail message there. I'll pick up that message, we'll record it, and then I'll answer it here live on the show. So in order to take part in this, and I'd love to have your questions, love to hear your real questions from the field, go to speakpipe.com / ask Dom. Just leave your message there and we'll take care of all the details after that. Thanks so much, folks.
Hey, Dom, it's Seamus, and you bet I've got a question. I'm running a pretty good size architectural millwork shop, and we have between 9 to 11 guys depending on the season. Plus, I use subcontractors for installs, obviously. Now, I was listening to one of your episodes, and you said I have to get really good at understanding my ideal customer. I'm not really sure what you mean by that, but in reality, I don't think that's going to work for me because there's maybe 5 or 6 builders in town, and of course, everybody bids on the same work. So how can I find a better customer if everybody's fighting over the same customer, if you know what I mean? Any help and insight would be great. Thanks, Dom. Appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new segment that we have. This new segment is going to replace Story Time with Dom. I'll tell you the reason why. I've done about 300 episodes between both shows, and it's not that I'm running out of stories. It just feels like I'm repeating myself. So, as with all things, we sat down, my team and we looked at the problem. We decided it was time to come up with a new solution. And the new solution is to ask you, the listeners, of which there are thousands every month. You may not know this, but there are thousands and thousands every month who listen to new episodes. We decided to ask you guys, what are your questions? And there's a tool for you to do that. So right now we're going to talk to Seamus, we're not going to talk to Seamus. Seamus left a message. You'll see how this works in a second. It's pretty cool. Seamus left a message. I'm going to respond to his question here specifically. Seamus's very specific question. So if you have a question that excites you, frustrates you, concerns you, that's stuck in your head, that you just can't figure out about your business, soup to nuts, top to bottom, leave it here. And I will work real hard to get it in as one of the podcast episode pieces. It'll be here at the end now. Instead of Story Time with Dom, we're going to do Q&A with Dom. So let me stop talking about it and let's start doing it. Seamus's question, as you just heard, architectural millwork firm, 9 to 12 employees with subs. He has a question about ideal customers, right? So the ideal customer question is one that comes up a lot. It comes up a lot in business coaching. And the reason it comes up a lot is because we feel frustration as owners because we're doing this custom work. And you listen to a guy like me and you're like, well, I'll just put a system in place. I mean, if you're going to sort and pack 1,000 peanuts a day, every single day for 25 years, this is the sorting and packing of peanuts process. But you're listening going, but Tom, we don't sort and pack peanuts. We don't make the same widget all the time. I get it. You're right. You don't sort and pack peanuts all the time. You do custom work, whether you do custom ventilation hoods, whether you do custom home building, custom renos, or in Seamus's case, architectural millwork. For those of you that don't know, architectural millwork is like cabinetry to the 10th degree. It is the most beautiful artistic cabinetry there could ever be. And so, yeah, he's doing custom work. Look, the work output does not change. The process remains the same. Now, I don't claim to be an architectural millwork tools expert, but I can tell you that the wood comes in the back of the shop. It goes and gets cut on the CNC. Then it gets edge banded somewhere in there. It's going to get sanded. Like, those processes happen no matter what the custom job. I don't care if you're doing the Vatican. It's still going to follow the same process. That's the process we're talking about. So when we're thinking about the ideal client, the fact that you do custom work is irrelevant. You're asking a great question, Seamus. Please, thank you for asking. You're just asking the wrong question in the wrong place. So let's get to his actual question, which is, Dom, how do I find my ideal customer? What you got to do is an autopsy. Yeah, you've got to do an autopsy on a few jobs. Now, here on the show, what do we call an autopsy? It's the end of job report. The end of job report might sound very simplistic, and it is. Simple systems need to drive your company. It's the discipline of those simple systems that gives you the greatness, right? Think about a marathon runner. What do they do to train to do a marathon? They just run. But they have the discipline to run and run and run and run until they're a great marathon runner, until they get better every day. We have to have the discipline as owners, or our company won't have the discipline to run itself. So you've got to have the discipline to do this thing. So it's, a simple system is like cogs in a wheel. All of the things start to fit together. And before you know it, things that used to be a headache are just forgotten. Like, that they're going to happen. It's simple systems and this quiet confidence that you get in predictability. So let me tell you how you get to these EOJs, these end of job reports, or what I just called an autopsy. First, you need some time to think. You need to carve some time out of your schedule to think. So in order to do this job, the first time to do this gathering of the end of job report data, the first time you do it, it's going to be hard. Let's not beat around the bush. You're not going to know what reports are. You're not going to know when to do it. You're going to give yourself a bit of time, but not enough time. And somebody comes and interrupts you, all that normal stuff, right? So the first time you do it, it's going to be hard. But the second and third time you do it, it's going to be easier. So here's what you prepare, okay? First of all, you need time. I would say for the first time you do an end of job report in your company. Now, you don't have to be an architectural millwork company. You could be a mason. You could do kitchen countertops. You could do roofing. But you want to go back and you want to look at the information on a completed job. Get all the invoices, all the receipts, all the notes that you have. If they're electronic, that's even better. But if it's paper, gather that up. That's just number one. Once you've gathered it all up in one place, stop. Set yourself another appointment to just review that information. Now, in that second appointment with yourself, review the information and ask yourself, what did we think we were going to spend on this job? And what did we actually spend on this job? What did we think we were going to make on this job? What did we actually make on this job? And so in your mind, if you can see this piece of paper or maybe this Excel spreadsheet or maybe the report you're trying to pull, and this is more than a QuickBooks report, folks, more than QuickBooks, right? We're not talking about tax data. We're talking about business operations data, like the guts of running this business. Because I'll tell you this, if you're profitable job by job, at the end of the year, you will have a profitable company. Now, if you're doing things in the operating costs or the cost of goods that are wonky, if you're ordering pizza and you're buying vehicles on the company dime all the time without, running it through the proper channels, of course, you're not going to have the profits you want. But look, if you're profitable job by job, you will be profitable at the end of the year. If you're running a disciplined business, if you have the simple systems in place that give you that quiet confidence of a predictable system, that's what we're talking about here. That's everything that I work in, is the predictability of simple systems. So meeting number one with yourself, gather the data. That's all you got to do. Just gather the data in one place. If it's a pile of paper in a shoebox, put it in a shoebox in one place. But then set an appointment with yourself and look at that data, look at that information and write it down. What was our estimates to do this job? What did we think we were going to spend on materials? What did we think we were going to spend on labor? What did we going to think we were going to spend on overtime? What did we think we were going to spend on X or Y or Z? What did we calculate our total costs to be? What did we think our profit was going to be? How much percentage was that profit? What was our gross profit margin? What was our gross profit margin? That's an important number to calculate, right? If you've never calculated gross profit margin before, look it up online or give me a call. You know that I'm always open to your calls. Just shoot me a text, 604-837-8361. Just say, Dom, let's talk, and we'll talk about that. Anyways, you do that column first. What did we think? What was our estimate? And then what was our actual? Now you look at 10 jobs like this. Your goal, your job in the beginning is to compare 10 jobs, like a head-to-head battle. Did this job do better? Did that job do better? Now, Seamus, since you were the gentleman who took the time to ask the question, we'll use an architectural millwork example. Let's say that you're building a new courthouse, right? Custom work in the judge's chambers. I don't know, just made that up. You're doing that custom work in the judge's chambers. Okay, so you did a courthouse and it looked like this. And that courthouse came from Rubino GCs. And it was bid tender work, right? Then the next job that you did, Seamus, was 3 Panera breads. So you've got 3 separate Panera breads that you have as a contract. It's still architectural millwork. It's not fancy, but it's, detailed. There's millwork, there's specs. It comes from a GC who's serious about what they're doing. So now you got 3 Panera breads versus a courthouse, right? Now, the next job you look at is maybe a law firm reception because they're doing a remodel. Okay, so that's the next job. The next job is this new software company. It's a gaming studio. They've got funky artwork. They've got acoustical panels being brought in from Germany. They got special materials brought in from Spain. They've got locally made, reclaimed, amalgamated wood products out of scrap that you've got to mill and machine and make look nice. All sorts of weird stuff, right? Still made out of wood and the glass and steel that you do buyouts for. So now you got 5 or 6 jobs right there. Okay, stop. Grab yourself a coffee. Let's see, I've got my coffee mug here. Grab yourself a coffee. Sit down and put all those pieces of paper in front of you. You've got the the courthouse. You've got 3 or 4 Panera breads. You've got a law firm. And then you've got this, whatever the last one was that I said, right? Now, head-to-head comparison, which job was best? Which job was the least hassle for you guys? Which job lined up nicely with what you do? Every company is different. Your people are unique. Like the combination of people you have in your company is unique. The setup of the machinery is unique. The layout of your building is unique. I work with one gentleman up in New England. His building is like a couple hundred years old and it's super narrow. And that, because it's narrow, it lends itself to a certain type of processing that has to happen, right? He doesn't have a lot of room to go sideways. Everything's got to move from the front to the back, front to the back, front to the back. And then just while we're talking about it, he's got 3 levels. So he has to do things in a certain way. And that means his jobs have to look a certain way. Then you found your ideal client. The ideal client is the one that pays you the most for the least amount of hassle, right? So, sometimes you hear me as a coach saying, well, come and talk to me if you want to work less and earn more. That's what we're talking about right here. I want you to work less and I want you to earn more. And that's what the ideal customer conversation comes down to. So, Seamus, brilliant question. I appreciate you taking the time to ask. And folks, if you want to ask your own question, go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom. So again, speakpipe.com/ask Dom, and then just ask me your question. And if the question is well considered, we'll use it here on the podcast like Seamus's was. Once you've got your perfect customer, let's just say out of this whole thing, the Panera breads turned out to be really good. Panera breads, for all, of all the cool sexiness of all those other applications, the Panera breads, the last one was a software company, right? Yeah. So the Panera breads turned out to be great. So now sit down and think, grab yourself a coffee, sit down and think, how do I get more customers like Panera breads? Well, that came from a certain kind of general contractor. It's a certain kind of application. This is somebody who does retail restaurant chains. They're an architect who does retail restaurant chains. They're a GC that does retail restaurant chains. They're a GC who works with franchises. I actually don't know if Panera is a franchise, but it's going to fall within that same model. Now a light is shining across your city. You're like, oh, I get my best work from companies that GC retail multi-location restaurants. Who else does retail multi-location restaurants? And so you start to put together a list. Maybe you ask your assistant, or you go online and you buy a list. You can just buy lists online, right? Now that you've got the list, you have the power. And so, Seamus, what you've done now is once you've created a list, you've got a target list, you could start marketing yourself proactively to those companies that do work with multi-location restaurant renovations and new builds. And that's how you find your ideal customer. You see, one of the problems that many of us have in construction is we didn't grow up to be marketers. We grew up really good with our hands, really good on the tools. We could fix anything. Nothing scares us, but we're not trained as marketers. Well, now you have to put your marketing hat on. Call me, help you with that, right? You got to put your marketing hat on. And once you have the target list, then we can start to create a campaign. Is it going to be a direct mail campaign? Is it going to be a postcard campaign? Are you going to geofence them using SEO? And if you don't know what that is, contact me and I'll tell you who to talk to on that. But once you've got the target list, you know who to go after. And what you'll do is slowly you'll start to turn your company from being reactive to being proactive. A reactive company waits and relies on, like you said, 5 or 6 GCs giving us work, and the other 5 or 6 millwork companies all fight for the scraps. Whoever's lowest wins. What a crap way to live. Stop that. If you're stuck in that loop, call me or text me now, because you're just not seeing the question the right way. I understand your frustration, but you don't have to accept it. Accepting it is the problem. Send me a text, 604-837-8361. Just say, Dom, let's talk. And if you want, you can say, Dom, let's talk. You've made me frustrated. I'm okay with that too. But I want you to understand, if you're like Seamus and there's 5 or 6, I can't remember if you said 5 or 6 guys like him and 5 or 6 companies giving them business, but either way, we're swimming in a very small pond. And the only way to win is to be low cost provider. Come on, guys. That's not what you dreamt of when you started or took over this business. And it doesn't have to be that way. I do this with lots of companies all around the world. Anyways, I think we've hit this question well enough. Seamus, juicy one. That's a good question. I appreciate it. Really good question. If you've got a question that you want me to answer on the podcast, again, please go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom. Now, here's something you guys don't know, but I produce 6 podcast episodes a month. There's 4 on Profit Tool Belt, and there's 2 on Cabinet Maker Profit System. This one, lines up nicely with the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. But if you have a question, send it in. I actually need your help. I need good questions from smart, wise people who have a frustration or a thought or a question that I can answer, because that gives the most value back to you. That's what I want. I want to give you a ton of value. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for checking in. This, depending on when it goes live, Seamus, you might actually be the first guy going live on the question and answer with Dom. So a big thank you to you, buddy. I appreciate it. For all of you listening who are getting value from this, I appreciate it. Thank you for listening. I'm glad you get value. You are not alone as a business owner. You are not. Listen to this show. Join the Contractor Strategy Group, which is a free Facebook group we have that's just for, you can think of it as just for listeners of the show, right? Just for business owners who have questions about construction and contracting. That's all it is. That's all we talk about in there. So come and join us there. Anyways, thanks, folks. And then if you want to get in touch with me for any of these answers, for any of your questions, shoot me a text, 604-837-8361. I just say, Dom, let's talk. And then you know what we'll do? We'll talk.